Hey y'all, welcome to the Hot Rod Dad channel. Glad you came, hope you stay. Like, subscribe, comment, share, etc., etc. It is a beautiful sunshiny day here in Tennessee, although a little bit cold. And the family and I are getting ready to go out on a Sunday drive. But I've got for you a video today all about the progress I've made on the BLT this week. And I got the steering box mounted in there temporarily. I've got to finish welding it in, and I got the alternator moved up. So without further ado, here is an update on the BLT. Okay, so if you watched my video on the Vega steering box mount that's going right here on the side of the frame, you'll know that I discovered in that video that I'm going to have to raise the alternator up some to clear the Vega steering box. It's going to mount right here in this general location. So I went ahead and got the box out of the way so I can get in here to work a little bit better. And I'm going to start mounting the alternator in here. So I've got to build a bracket that's going to mount right here on the front of the engine. I thought about building something that's going to come off of this engine mount right here, but I thought it best to keep them separate in case I need to change something later on down the road. So this is a 3/8 16 threaded hole right here. It's an accessory hole on the front of the engine. I'm going to start right here, and that'll be my first mounting point. Now, there's a couple more holes right here on the front of the engine. I may have to use one of those, if not both of them. So I'm going to get started making the bracket, and y'all follow along. So I figured the best place to start when trying to figure out how to mount this alternator onto the engine is at this pivot point. So by measuring that, I can see that it's right at 2 inches from one side to the other. And after having dug through my scrap pile, I found this piece of 2.5 inch square tubing. It's 1/4 inch wall, and that makes it right at 2 inches on the inside. So I tried that on the alternator, and it fits nicely on there. So the first thing I'm going to do is slice off about a 1 inch section of this tubing, and then I'll cut it in half right here and make just kind of a little U-shaped bracket, and I'll drill the hole in it from one side to the other, and that'll make me a nice little pivot point bracket. And then I will figure out how to mount it onto the engine. But before I slice that section off the tubing right there, I decided it'd be an opportune time to chunk it in the drill press and drill my mounting holes. Now, that gives me the advantage of having this big chunk of steel to clamp down on instead of just that little section right there. It gives me a little bit of an advantage, and by passing this drill bit through both sides of the tubing, it ensures that the holes are going to be perfectly aligned. So I'm going to go ahead and drill those holes. Then I'll move on to slicing that section off. It's all about planning out your work, guys. Okay, so after digging through the scrap pile, I found this piece of angle. It looks awfully familiar to this motor mount right here, and that's because it was the first motor mount that I cut out when I was building the motor mounts, and somehow it ended up not fitting just right. I think the holes were off just a little bit or something. Anyway, I ended up cutting a new one out, and I just scrapped that one. So I've got that bolted onto the motor. There's a threaded hole right here, just about the same as these two for the motor mount, and so I just bolted it to that piece of angle already had a hole drilled in it, so I just bolted it on right there. I'm going to set that pivot point now on top of that, and I think that's going to put it in just about the right location height wise, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so that's what that looks like. I've got the alternator and the bracket, the pivot bracket there I made, just clamped together right there on that piece of angle, as you can see right there. And that actually looks pretty good, lines up good with the water pump pulley. and I'll have good adjustment right here. This will lay on over after this is out of the way. So the only problem I have now is I only have it bolted to that one point on the engine block. So if you look just around here on the front, there's a couple of holes right there that are also threaded. I don't know how well you can see them right in there on the front of the engine, and I think I can build a brace or a kicker that comes off of this piece of angle, and that will tie it into the block on the front too, so that will keep that from moving around. Okay, so right there are the two holes I was talking about on the front of the engine block, and I'm going to make a pattern right there to cut out a small piece of metal, and then I will use that to weld to the piece of angle right here, and that will brace it up. So I'm going to show you a quick little trick that I use from time to time when I'm making patterns like that, and that is to break out just a roll of masking tape. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm just going to put that piece of masking tape in there like that. Make sure to get it good and flat. Well, okay. Now I'm going to keep cutting pieces of masking tape right here until I get the shape that I want. Now that's got that filled in pretty good right there. So now I'm just going to add a few more pieces just to beef up my pattern a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to take a pen or marker and mark out this lower edge, and I'll mark out this upper edge, and then I'm going to take an X-Acto knife and cut out these two holes right here. So that's the upper line that I want to cut out. Now I'm going to feel around right here and find that hole, and I'll just cut out this with an X-Acto knife. Just like that, and then I'll do the same with the upper hole. Just like that. Okay, after having taken a pair of scissors and fine-tuning my pattern, that's what it looks like. And then I just took that and stuck it to a piece of 1/4-inch plate, and I had a good pattern by which to trim that piece of metal out of and mark my holes and everything. So that's how that turned out, and I'm ready to bolt that onto the motor and see how it fits. Well, that turned out pretty nice. The pattern worked well, and you can see I've got this piece of metal bolted to the engine block right there. So I now think what I'm going to do is pull the bolt out of the alternator and go ahead and tack weld those two pieces together, and I'll probably put another tack weld right down here on the bottom. Then I'll unbolt this whole part, and I'll trim off all this extra metal that I don't need. Then I will probably install the part one more time just to make sure everything lines up the way I want it to and everything looks good. And then I'll finalize all the welding on it and clean everything up, grind all the edges and make it look pretty. Okay, so that's what the bracket looks like all welded up. Pretty simple little bracket. Took a little while to make it though. Turned out really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and bolt it on the engine right there and get the alternator mounted. This side bolt right here is a 3/8 16 thread bolt. And these bolt holes on the front are 7/16. I'm not sure why that General Motors made those different sizes, but that's what they did. So that's what I got to work with. And this alternator bracket has got 3 real solid mounting points right here. So it should be incredibly sturdy. I really enjoy making little small mounts like this, engine mounts, transmission cross members, alternator brackets, and just about anything that pertains to setting a chassis up. I enjoy doing. That's always been my favorite thing when building a car or truck. Get a lot of satisfaction from little parts like this because even though it may be just a little small part, you know, every part you make is one step closer to getting your ride on the road. So it brings a lot of satisfaction to when you get even small projects like this done. Yeah, that works out perfect. Now the only thing left to do, you can see just how much adjustment I could put in that thing. Now the only thing left to do is to add the top adjustment bracket right here. And I think that this is the original Mercruiser bracket. And I'm not exactly sure how, I think it bolted on right here. But because the alternator was mounted lower on the engine before, I think I'm going to have to modify this somewhat. Probably going to make it a little shorter and probably rebend this end right here. Okay, here is my steering box bracket that I made in the last video. And as you can see right here, because the bracket is going to have to be at an angle on the frame because my frame rails are tapered, not parallel. I have took some pieces of scrap metal, and the first one I put on was this one right here. This is just a piece of 3/8 inch round stock, and I just tacked it on to set the angle. So this edge right here will be flush up against the frame, and this one will be spaced out 3/8 of an inch. So after I tacked that piece on and got the angle where I wanted it, I just took some piece of 3/16 thick flat stock right there, and I tacked those on the side. And once I got everything fitting the way I wanted it, went ahead and finish welded this up. And what I'm going to do right here, I just left these pieces straight for welding, because these are actually going to be tapered from 3/8 of an inch all the way back to nothing right here. And I knew it would be a whole lot easier to weld this up with some thickness right here to this metal, because this is basically just going to be a wedge shaped, and it'll actually go down to nothing right here and be incredibly difficult to weld. So I just went ahead and left those running wild out here for now. Now I'm going to go back and trim these down. All right, that turned out really nice. You You can see right here, I just took my bandsaw and put it on this edge right here. This 3/8 round stock right here. And I put the other edge of the bandsaw right there, rested it on that edge, and sawed that off in a straight line. Now I've got the perfect angle right there for my frame. And so I'm going to get the steering box bolted to this and chunk it in the frame and see how it looks. All right, that's how everything looks installed. You can see the Vega steering box mount right here and the pitman arm right down there. And I've got the alternator moved up in its permanent, I hope, location. Got good clearance for my exhaust ports right there. And I've got kind of a broomstick right here simulating the steering shaft so I can get an idea of where it's going to be. So all in all, everything looks like it's going to work out well. And before I proceed with the steering, hooking up the steering and stuff like that, I want to get all the weight on the car, or almost all the weight on it, because I'm going to have to cut into those wishbones and get a little more caster in that axle. So before I proceed with the steering, I'm going to get on to making the headers, installing the gas tank back there, and get all of the other things on the car that needs to be in place, so I can kind of get an idea how much the car is going to weigh, how the car is going to be stanced, how much the suspension is going to squat, and all that kind of stuff. So I will keep you updated on the steering. And I think my next project is going to be the headers. Hey y'all, thanks for checking out this episode of the BLT. If this is your first time visiting the channel and you want to see more of this project, I will put a card up at the end of the video, a good little walk around video I did a while back of the project, so you can check that out. And if you like the content on the channel, I would appreciate it if you give it a big thumbs up, like, and subscribe. And until next time,
y'all get out there and build something.
That's right. Y'all get out there and build something.